we're seeing in the online classifieds, not just real estate, but cars, jobs, homes, is the industry transforming. Each of them, they're becoming marketplaces. At the end of the day, that's the whole objective. Can we transact online around cars, jobs, homes? And the way we sort of think about that is we look at it's sort of been driven by a number of things. It's been driven by the opportunity. It's been driven by technology. It's been driven by people realizing they're creating a lot of value, but not necessarily capturing all the value that's been created. So you can see nowadays, if you want to buy cars, you can go and buy a Tesla online, have it configured, and have it basically delivered. And we'll see a bunch of those sort of examples. What we're also seeing is the changing nature of classifieds from that traditional model of being an advertising vehicle to being one in which transactions can occur. Platforms. It's about building platforms. So what I want to talk about for the next 25 minutes is the rapidly changing nature of the online classifieds industry. Now, when we think about that, you've got to think about, well, what is the industry? How is it structured? What does it look like? And it's a pretty simple process that exists today. And we've all seen this before. At one end, you've got the Googles, the Facebooks, vertical search guys. They're generating traffic. This traffic sort of goes to the portals, the horizontals, the industry sites, and so on. They take that traffic and convert it into leads. These leads are then sold, usually as part of a subscription, to agents and project marketers, sometimes direct to developers, who then convert that to sales. So it's a pretty simple process. We all know that. It's a statement of the obvious. Okay? And of course, buyers come in everywhere. They either go to the Googles, the Facebooks, the vertical searches. A lot of them go there because they really, in some markets, and we'll use Mexico as an example, and we see this from Machula, and Trova will see it as well, is that the buyers don't necessarily differentiate between a vertical search player and a portal player. They just see it as a place that I can go see listings. They click and they go and see the details page. Buyers, of course, directly go to portals and horizontal and industry sites and such. Or they go direct to the agents and the project marketers. And that's all around the primary transaction. Okay? The primary transaction is where a lot of the value is created. And of course, though, there are secondary transactions that exist in this sphere. You know, these secondary transactions they sort of exist because the primary transaction exists. Yeah? People are buying homes, but they need a mortgage, they need insurance, they need relocation services. They're buying a car. They need to finance it. They need insurance. They need to put in GPS tracking. You know, if you look at the guys from Latam Auto, they've said, well, you know, how do I make money? Well, one of the things I've got to do if I'm going to sell insurance products and financing products to people who are buying cars, I've got to put a GPS in there as well. So they're creating opportunities. So we have this sort of primary transaction and then the secondary transaction market that exists around it. That is the online real estate classifieds process. Now, traditionally, people have stayed in their lane. Google's done the traffic generation. Vertical search guys have done the traffic generation. Classified players have really focused on generating leads. Get traffic, convert it to leads, make money from the advertising dollar. Industry players have said, well, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm going to be an industry player, focus on the commission. And of course, you had mortgage providers, insurance providers, and relocation services. However, there are challenges facing everyone in the industry because industries don't stay still. They evolve and evolve quickly. So here's an idea. Here's a thing. You know, what's a challenge facing the industry players, the agents, the developers? Well, prices are going up on online marketing. This is straight out of Rightmove's most recent report came out a couple of days ago from last year. They've basically got an 11% growth in their average revenue per advertiser, but only a 4.5% growth in traffic. They're basically extracting more and more value from the existing customers for what is fundamentally the same eyeballs. They're not growing the traffic at the same rate. If you look at the REA group, you see the same thing. The amount of yield extracted increases significantly, while at the same time, the volume of traffic is not increasing at the same rate. So the industry players, the agents and developers and project marketers are feeling a bit of the squeeze. They're paying more and more, a higher percentage of their commission to the online marketers. In Germany, it's around 10%. So clearly there's a bit of a squeeze. In addition, if you're an agent, you're getting squashed. You've got these online agents, internet agents, new agents, it doesn't matter what you want to call them, the purple bricks, the easy properties, the red fins, the compasses, people who are using technology to fundamentally change the business process. You've got the traditional portals that are saying, well, how do I become a project marketer? How do I become an agent? The Zillows, the Zameen's, and a lot of you guys are doing that. And you've got the sales-focused portals, those who actually do basically the job of an agent, but they're coming from the portal perspective. The Square Yards, the SoFun, the Leisure, so on, PropTiger, a lot of these guys are in the room today. That's putting pressure on the industry players. And then, of course, you've got challenges facing the established market classified players, the portals, etc., general classified sites. Well, first of all, the revenue growth is slowing for these guys. So you look here, the comparison, the blue bar is the growth of revenue from 2015 to 2016, and the growth of revenue from 2016 to 2017. Revenue growth is slowing. Yes, for some of these guys, they're very large numbers. They're the hundreds of millions of pounds or dollars and such. But the revenue growth is slowing. Zoopla had a negative growth because in 2015 to 2016, on the market existed or sort of emerged. A lot of the agents, about 25% of their agents, more or less, left Zoopla to go to on the market, because on the market sort of instigated a rule. For those of you who don't know, On the Market is a player in the United Kingdom. It emerged 4 or 5 years ago, 6 years ago probably. It was an industry player who said, well, Rightmove, Zoopla are making a lot of money from being a portal play. We can do that too. We are the industry. Let's group together, lock arms, and we will compete with them. And then they've said, well, we need to have an incentive to make ourselves successful. So if you join On the Market, and we'll give you some equity in that if you do join us, you can only be on one other portal. Okay? So you had to choose between basically Zoopla and Rightmove. So clearly most chose Rightmove rather than Zoopla because you go with the market leader, which meant Zoopla had a decrease in revenue. Rightmove continued to grow quite merrily. But Zoopla then changed its model, and we'll talk about that in a minute, which led to revenues coming back. But at the end of the day, revenues are slowing down. In addition, portals are starting to capture sort of deep market penetration. This is a bit of interesting sort of research. The residential Australian advertising market is about $1.2 billion per annum. If you look at the revenue of the REA group for online residential, that's 39% of that number. It was about, this is as of the 12 months ended of December last year. It's just under $500 million. Take Domain, who's the major competitor. They've got about $170 million, more or less. Combined, 53%, or over half the revenue, is going to online plays. Throw in Domain's print, 60% of the revenue is going to those two players. At some point, you cap out, because that 1.2 billion has been pretty much 1.2 billion for a long time. It just used to be all in print. So clearly, portals are starting to reach some market limits of what they can do. Also, portals are becoming reliant on depth products to drive their growth. It's the other side of the coin when you think about it. Agents are getting squeezed, paying more for access to the same eyeballs. Portals are having to do that to extract revenues. So this is from a couple of days ago from Rightmove's 2017 full year report, and you can see that 84% of Rightmove's increase in revenue from 2016 to 2017 was driven by ARPA growth, or their premium products. Clearly there's some limits around that. You can't just keep charging more and more and more, or coming up with innovative ways of making, the pixels bigger, right? Or the advertising bigger at the end of the day. REA, it's the same sort of issue. This is for the half year numbers, and you can see from their EBITDA growth, their profit growth, 98% of it has come from basically, if you choose between residential depth products, basically charging more to those currently people who are advertising, versus getting new subscriptions. It's only 700,000 increase in the subscription revenues, but 49 million increase of their EBITDA is coming out of the depth products. So clearly there's some issues, because you're becoming very reliant on charging more and more to drive your growth. And of course, these listed portals, as an example, and it's really all companies who are operating the space, have high market expectations still. We can see here Zillow's at 8, these are US dollars. So Zillow's clearly got a lot of expectations still built into it, 8.8 billion. Yes, they make $1 billion in revenue. They've got about $1 billion in costs, and their market cap is 8.8 billion. So people are still saying you're going to monetize this better and better over time. REA Group's at 8 billion, Rightmove's at 5.7, 4.8 for ImmoScout 24, SoFund 2.3, Zoopla 2.1, Domain 1.4, and Lifel, Queso, for you, 1.2. So very important to see that there's a lot of expectation built into these businesses. That puts pressure. Where am I going to get more money out of it? And of course, just as there are challenges facing the established market players, there are challenges facing the emerging market players. Okay? And these are different types of challenges. Agents and developers are slow to adopt online marketing. And by adopt, I mean pay for it. Okay? There's a lot of challenges if you and I'm involved in quite a number of sites operating in these emerging markets and some early stage markets. The agents just don't want to pay. You could get money out of developers, but it's not easy. General classified sites are dominant. Monetization is happening, but at low levels. High levels of competition. Mexico's a great example. There's just so many people playing in that market because it's large. There should, in theory, be a lot of money being captured. But it's challenging. Profitability is taking a long time to emerge. It's not as simple as people thought. The game is not playing out the same way as it did in some of these established markets. It's not a winner-takes-all or just two dominant player type outcome. And they're impatient investors. They want to see growth. They want to see return. So the problem is, you've got initial growth projections are often being missed, profitability is hard, and there's pressure from shareholders. So there are challenges facing players in the emerging markets. So how are players, or the traffic players, think about the Googles, the Facebooks, changing what they do? What's interesting is that Google is starting to say, and Facebook is starting to say, let's start to get into the lead generation business. Okay, and so what do we see? We see jobs as an interesting one. I don't know if you've spent much time looking at the jobs industry, but Google, you just do a search now on Google for jobs. Instead of getting links to other players, you now get jobs inserted into your search result. This one happens to be for, I don't know, whatever I did, nursing in Hawaii for some reason. Okay, and then you can still, within Google, see the details page about that job. Question is, will they do that in cars? Will they do it in real estate? You've got to keep an eye on them. It's a natural extension for them. Facebook, they're doing it a slightly different way. They're thinking about how do we leverage all that data that we have to target people behaviorally. And so this is an example of what you can do in the US. They've taken some data from a company called Epsilon, overlaid it to their current data set to identify people who are likely to move in the next 12 months. So if you're a real estate agent and you want to promote either listings or yourself, do you want to go and use targeted Facebook ads where you're talking to people who are likely to move in the next 12 months? Pretty good service. Sort of makes it challenging for the portals if they're going to compete against this. Behavioural targeting, understanding who's visiting your site, what they're there for, is what Facebook's got a lot of data about. Do you have that data? Can you make these same levels of focusing of your advertising? Home ownership. You can target people who are first home buyers, homeowners, renters, and so on. It's providing the capacity to target at a much more refined level. Because if you think about portals today, it's a bit of a broad advertising that occurs. Yes, you put your advertisement into your listings into a portal. Yes, the portal brings people to the listings, but it tends to happen at a macro level. You hope that the person does the right search and then finds the right property. The next step is targeting to make sure that I know that you're coming, who you are, what you're there for, and I put the right property in front of you before you even ask the question. Or the right agent at the end of the day. How are the classified players changing what they do? Well, clearly the thing you've got to understand is where's the money? Where are the pools of money? So we look at the process again. We have advertising revenues. We have tools-based revenues, commission-based revenues, and secondary transaction-based revenues. And if we look at the Australian market as an example, because you can get some good data on this, there's 1.2 billion spent on marketing. There's 12 billion spent on commissions. And another 2.2 billion spent on just commissions to mortgage providers. Which one of these pools do you want to go fish in? Do you want to be fishing in the 1.2 billion pool, being an REA and a domain, and between the two of you, you've got 60% of it already? Or do you want to go fishing in the $12 billion pool? Or you want to fish in the $2.2 billion pool for mortgages? It's pretty obvious what you're going to do. So what happens at the end of the day, portals are expanding into transactions in some markets, and in other markets are saying, let's become mortgage providers, insurance providers, relocation services. Obvious. Bunch of you guys are doing that today for all the reasons we've identified so far. Here's some examples. The REA Group with Smartline and NAB. They acquired 80% of Smartline last year for 67 million, and it's already contributing. Just go check the financials out for the company, and I think it added about 10 million in revenues, I think more or less, if I remember correctly. Domain's got Lendy. These are starting to become meaningful, interesting revenue growth options for these traditional players. Zoopla is a really interesting case study. We'll spend a few minutes on it. Zoopla has a clear diversification approach. Okay? It's basically said, we were in property marketing. We had Zoopla, we had Prime Location. We were doing quite well in that and we sort of liked it. We bought some software because, getting into the software product, that's called the Property Software Group, which is basically Vibra, is the main product in there. It's going well. They had the external shock to the business on the market, which basically took away revenues from that core property side. They said, well, what do? Do we sit there and just try to fight on that front, or do we expand? And they said, well, let's get into comparison. They bought Uswitch, Money. They've just bought another one called Casassus or something in the Netherlands, so they're expanding outside the United Kingdom. And they bought HomeTrack, which is a data business, and HomeTrack provides AVM, automated valuation models in the United Kingdom that banks use to loan money against. They said, I'm going to get deeper into the ecosystem. So they bought 8 different companies over the last 3 years. We talked about Uswitch for 160 million, HomeTrack was 120 million. This Calcasa was purchased in December for 27 million, and it's market analytics in the Netherlands. So they're starting to think, wait a second, I can now expand into Europe. Very interesting how they're thinking about growing the business. So what's happening now, and these are the numbers for 2017, so the year just finished, 52% of their revenue comes from those comparison sites, and 48% comes from the property group. But what's interesting is only 32% of revenues now are coming from that traditional business, the business that was Zoopla and Prime Location. They're diversifying, they're leveraging their assets, they're leveraging the visitation from one to the other, and it's working very well. They had 255 million in revenue, pounds in revenue last year. How does that compare to Rightmove? They've closed the gap with Rightmove on a revenue perspective. In fact, they had slightly more revenue than Rightmove in 2017. Not a bad effort if you're looking through the lens of revenues. Problem is, when you look at profit before tax, Rightmove kills them. Okay? Absolutely kills them. But they're running at basically a 75% EBITDA margin. So when you look at Rightmove, you're looking at a company that says, I do online real estate advertising. Full stop. I am the place you go to in the United Kingdom for that. Nowhere else to really go to. And the agents know it, and the agents pay. They're paying just under £1,000 per month per office. And there's about 25,000 offices in the United Kingdom. Zoopla has said, I can't compete like that, but I have to grow my revenues. I have to grow my EBITDA, my profit. The way I'll do it is by diversification and moving into ancillary businesses. Having built that platform, I'm now going to push traffic between them to hopefully bring up my yields over time. Zillow is another interesting case. They've gone into instant offers. Here, the home buyer, if you want to sell, can receive an all-cash offer. It's a pretty simple process, where if you want to sell your home without going through the traditional process of actually being the buyer finding the seller, or the seller find the buyer, they will buy it from you. Clearly, it's at a discount, but the quid pro quo is you get your cash guaranteed in a short period of time. They're doing the same in the motoring industry, and I think we were chatting about it with some of the people the other day. They're piloting it in Las Vegas and Orlando at the moment. And at the moment, Zillow's not collecting any money from this approach. But this is transactions. It's buying, it's partnering with someone with cash, improving and flipping. The other day in Australia, LJ Hooker and Ray White announced the partnership with Saleable, I think it's called, with the objective of doing the same thing. They will buy it, the property from you, clearly a discount. They'll renovate it and they'll resell it and make the profit on the way through. And that's now becoming a legitimate business model that we see in the market. We're also seeing the purple bricks of the world emerge. People who are saying, wait a second, I can change the way real estate is sold. Purple bricks, Compass, Redfin. How I can leverage technology. I can drive more efficient and effective systems and processes around doing this. So there are lots and lots and lots of changes that are occurring in the industry. It's about getting closer to the transaction or getting into the transaction. So what should online real estate classifieds do? Right? You can sit and watch. You can take the approaches of some of these big guys and attack it. It's up to you. What's very interesting is if you want to have a look at and I'd recommend everyone do this, go ahead and check out the Scout 24 financial results presentation. They've got a very interesting little chart in there. It starts with ImmoScout 24 at the bottom, then it talks about the online classifieds in online advertising industry, the total advertising real estate industry, the total transaction industry, then the total real estate industry. And they basically say that's a $500 billion industry, euro industry, that they could potentially participate in. So all these guys are clearly thinking about one thing. How do I dominate the industry, not just from advertising, from transactions, and all the ancillary transactions that go with it? That's the bet that the shareholders are placing on these companies, and that's why their market valuations are so high. They're betting that it will fundamentally change what happens. The challenge for all of us here is, what do we do? Do we wait for it to happen, or do we, in our own markets, lead, run hard, and capture that value as well? So what do you need to do? Clarity and strategy. especially about where you want to expand your business. You need that. 2, you need data and understanding of your visitor base because it's critical for success. Data, super critical. Your visitors, understanding who they are and how much you can get from them is critical. You need skills through acquisition, as you see with Zoopla, potentially through internal development, for primary and secondary transactions. And they are different sets of skills. And a number of the companies I'm involved in are working through how do I help sell real estate as part of this process. Different set of skills. Businesses need to be prepared to take the leap into these new revenue streams. So one is to look, then you've got to jump. And the challenge is you're now in this world of co-opetition. You are competing with your customer as well as servicing your customer. But that's reality. Google's doing it, Facebook's going to do it. How do you do it in your markets? And you need a new set of measures for success. This measure of average revenue per advertiser is probably suitable for one part of your business now. Now you've got to think about how do I extract value from all my visitors. So a yield per visit is probably the right measure. I get a bunch of visits through the door. How am I making money out of them? Zoopla's thinking, am I making money by getting them to look at real estate ads? Am I making money by getting them to use the U-Switch product? Am I making money from getting them to do other stuff? That's the way you need to think about it. The REA group's getting just over $1 per visit. Domain's about the same. Seek is not too bad. So the Australian real estate classifieds industry, online classifieds industry, has done a very good job at capturing value. I like the 2 blue boxes here from Zoopla and Rightmove. You can see that for visits, Zoopla's getting double the revenue versus Rightmove. It's because of the expansion strategy. If they keep executing well, there's a lot of upside for them. So over the next 2 days, and Javier, have you got your microphone? Okay. Over the next 2 days, we've got a bunch of sessions. There's actually just under, I think there's 30 sessions, more or less. Most presentations, a few interviews, there's a panel session or 2. And we've put them into sort of 6 categories. One's around the changing nature of online classifieds. The next is around the challenges of emerging markets, because a lot of you guys play in those emerging markets. It's about operational improvements. What can you do to better operationalize? How technology is driving that change. And that's tomorrow morning, some very interesting stuff that's being talked about. We have the pitch club that we'll do tomorrow, which is always a bit of fun. We've got 4 very, very interesting businesses that are actually going to pitch in 6-minute lots each about what they do, and they're looking for funding. And then we're looking about innovation in established markets. Now, my request to all the presenters was, I want you to think about how your companies are getting closer to the transaction, how your companies are trying to change the way you do business to extract value from the big pools of money that are available in your markets. So over the next 2 days, these 30 sessions, I think you're going to hear a lot of super innovative, super interesting discussions about how their parts of the world are changing. So thank you very much.